You're fired." Those words hit me like a sledgehammer to the gut, but I kept my face steady. My name's Jude, 28 years old, and until 3 seconds ago, I was the best warehouse supervisor Trevant Corp had ever seen. Now I was standing in Vincent Hayes' office watching him lean back in his leather chair like he'd just won the lottery. "Stay away from my daughter," he snarled, his face twisted with disgust. "You're not good enough for her." I'd been working at Trevanta for 6 years, moving up from loading dock to supervisor, putting in 12-hour days without complaint. The automotive parts warehouse in Detroit ran like clockwork because of me, and Hayes knew it. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was that I'd been dating his daughter, Claire, for 8 months, and he'd just found out. "Are you sure about that, sir?" I asked quietly, keeping my voice level. His eyes narrowed. "Pack your things and get out. Security will escort you." I nodded once and turned toward the door. What Hayes didn't know was that Claire had already told me everything about his side business. The fake invoices, the ghost shipments, the way he'd been skimming from insurance claims for damaged goods that never existed. She'd been worried sick about it for months, afraid her father was going to get caught. "And if I see you anywhere near Claire again," Hayes called after me, "I'll make sure you never work in this city again." I paused at the door and looked back at him. He was straightening papers on his desk, already dismissing me like I was nothing. Like the 6 years I'd given this company meant nothing. Like the relationship I had with his daughter was some kind of joke. "I understand," I said. But I didn't understand. Not really. What I understood was that Vincent Hayes thought he could push people around because he had money and connections. What I understood was that he'd rather destroy my life than admit his daughter could make her own choices. What I understood was that he'd been stealing from his own company for 3 years, and Claire had the proof. I walked out of his office with my head high, ignoring the stares from the other office workers. 2 security guards flanked me as I cleared out my locker, shoving 6 years' worth of personal items into a cardboard box. My hands were steady, but my mind was racing. Hayes had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He thought firing me would end this, but it was just the beginning. Claire was waiting for me in the parking lot, tears streaming down her face, holding a manila envelope that contained everything I needed to destroy her father's little empire. Some lines shouldn't be crossed. Vincent Hayes was about to learn that lesson the hard way. I'd started at Trevant fresh out of high school, desperate for steady work after. My dad lost his job at the Ford plant. The warehouse was brutal those first few years. Heavy lifting, long-hour supervisors who treated you like dirt. But I kept my mouth shut and did the work. By 22, I was running my own crew. By 25, I was supervising the entire night shift. Hayes had always kept his distance from the warehouse floor, but I'd see him during management meetings. He was the kind of man who wore expensive suits and talked about efficiency while never getting his hands dirty. The workers respected me because I'd earned it. Hayes expected respect because of his title. Everything changed when Claire started working in accounting 8 months ago. She was fresh out of college, Vincent's daughter, but she didn't act entitled like I'd expected. She asked good questions, stayed late to learn the systems, and treated everyone with respect. When she asked me to explain the warehouse inventory process, I spent 2 hours walking her through everything. We started talking during lunch breaks. She was smart, funny, and nothing like her father. When she asked me out for coffee, I almost said no. Dating the boss's daughter was asking for trouble. But something about Claire made me forget about being careful. The first warning sign came 3 months into our relationship. Claire mentioned some discrepancies she'd noticed in the shipping records. "My dad says it's just clerical errors," she told me over dinner, "but the numbers don't add up. I'd noticed things, too. Trucks leaving half empty when the manifest showed full loads. Insurance claims for damaged goods that I'd never seen." Hayes had started checking the warehouse cameras more often, making sure certain shipments went out when I wasn't on. "Judy, don't worry about it," I told Claire. "Your dad knows what he's doing," but she kept digging. Claire had her mother's conscience and her father's attention to detail. Over the next few months, she quietly documented everything. Fake shipping manifests, inflated damage claims, customer payments that never made it to the books. "I think my dad's stealing from the company," she had whispered to me 2 weeks ago, her hands shaking as she showed me copies of the documents. I don't know what to do. I should have told her to stay out of it. Should have convinced her to delete everything and pretend she'd never seen it. Instead, I helped her organize the evidence. We spent hours going through shipping records, cross-referencing them with her accounting files. Hayes must have noticed Claire's questions, her late nights in the office. Yesterday, she'd mentioned that her father seemed suspicious, asking who she'd been talking to at work. Now I knew why. Vincent Hayes had been watching us, waiting for the right moment to strike. He thought getting rid of me would solve his problems. He was wrong. Claire was leaning against my truck when I walked out of the building. The security guards finally leaving me alone. Her face was red from crying, but her jaw was set with determination. She held up the manila envelope. I grabbed everything before he could delete it. She said, "All the files I've been copying, it's all here." I set my cardboard box in the truck bed and took the envelope. Inside were photocopies of shipping manifests, insurance claims, and bank statements going back 3 years. The evidence was damning. Hayes had been systematically stealing from Travana Corp., skimming profits, and filing false insurance claims. Fired me because of this, didn't he?" I asked. Claire nodded. "He knows I've been asking questions. When I told him we were dating, he put it together. He thinks you put me up to investigating him." We sat in my truck in the parking lot going through the papers. The scope of Hayes's operation was bigger than I'd imagined. He'd stolen nearly $200,000 over 3 years using a network of fake vendors and inflated damage claims. Every time a shipment was supposedly damaged in transit, Hayes would file an insurance claim while the goods were quietly sold to his personal contacts. "I trusted him," Claire said quietly. "I thought he was just a tough businessman. I never imagined he was stealing." I watched her face as she spoke. Claire wasn't just angry about the theft. She was heartbroken. Her father had destroyed her faith in him, and now he destroyed my career to cover his tracks. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I looked at the Travana building, thinking about Hayes sitting in his office, probably celebrating his victory. He thought he'd won, thought he'd scared me off and silenced his daughter. He had no idea that Claire had already gathered enough evidence to send him to prison. "I'm going to make sure he faces the consequences," I said. "But your job?" My job was never safe. As long as he was stealing, he would have found another excuse to get rid of me eventually. Anyone who might notice his operation was a threat. Claire reached for my hand. "I'm sorry. This isn't my fault for digging into his business." "No," I said firmly. "This is his fault for being a thief. You did the right thing." I started the truck and pulled out of the parking lot. Hayes thought he'd won, but he'd made a critical mistake. He'd underestimated his own daughter. Claire had inherited his intelligence and attention to detail, but she'd also inherited her mother's moral compass. Vincent Hayes was about to learn the difference between respect and fear, and he was about to discover that sometimes the people closest to you can hurt you the most. The envelope on the seat between us contained his entire downfall. Now I just had to figure out how to use it. 2 days after getting fired, I decided to test the waters. I called Travana's main office and asked to speak with the regional manager, David Peterson. I'd worked with Peterson on several efficiency projects, and he'd always treated me fairly. "Jude," Peterson said when he took my call, "I heard about what happened. Vincent said you were stealing inventory." My blood ran cold. "That's not true, sir. I was fired because I'm dating his daughter." "Look, I've known Vincent for 15 years. He wouldn't make accusations like that lightly." "I'm sorry, but I can't help you." The line went dead. Hayes had gotten to Peterson first, spinning a story about theft to justify my firing. It was clever. Who would believe a disgruntled ex-employee over a respected company executive? I called 2 other contacts within the company. Both conversations went the same way. Hayes had poisoned the well. making sure anyone who might listen to my side of the story already believed I was a criminal. Claire was devastated when I told her what her father had done. "He's lying about you to protect himself," she said. "We have to do something." "We will, but we need to be smart about it." I spent the next few days researching Hayes's background, looking for patterns or connections that might help. What I found made my stomach turn. This wasn't his first time. At his previous job, a logistics company in Cleveland, there had been allegations of financial irregularities. Nothing was ever proven, but Hayes had left abruptly after internal audit. He was a professional thief, moving from company to company, stealing until things got too hot, then disappearing with a clean reference letter and a new target. On Friday morning, I got a call from Claire. "My dad wants to see me in his office. He says we need to talk about my future with the company. Don't go alone," I warned her. "I have to. If I refuse, he'll know I'm working against him." She called me back an hour later, her voice shaking. "He knows about the files." He didn't say it directly, but he kept asking about my access to the accounting system. He wants me to take a week off. Says I've been working too hard. He's buying time to cover his tracks. There's something else. He's transferring me to the Cleveland office. Says it's a promotion, but I think he wants me away from here. Hayes was moving fast, eliminating threats and consolidating his position. He'd painted me as a thief, and now he was isolating his daughter. In a week, all the evidence Claire had gathered might be worthless if he managed to alter the records. That evening, I met with Claire at a diner outside the city. She looked exhausted, torn between loyalty to her father and doing what was right. "Maybe we should just let it go," she said. "He's my dad. If this comes out, it'll destroy our family." "Your father destroyed your family when he started stealing. He destroyed my career to cover it up." "How many other people has he hurt?" Claire stared at her coffee cup. "I keep thinking about when I was little. He used to take me to work sometimes, show me around the office. He seemed so proud of what he'd built. That man might still be in there somewhere. But the Vincent Hayes I know is a thief who's willing to destroy anyone who threatens him." We sat in silence for a while. Finally, Claire looked up at me. "What do you need me to do?" "I need you to go to Cleveland, play along with his plan. But before you go, I need you to get me one more thing." "What?" "Access to his computer just for 10 minutes. Claire's eyes widened. "Jude, if he catches me, he won't. You're his daughter. He trusts you." She was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. "When?" "Tomorrow, after he leaves for his weekend golf game." Hayes thought he was 10 steps ahead of us. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He had underestimated what his daughter would do when she learned the truth about him. We were about to turn his own confidence against him. Saturday morning, Claire used her key card to enter the Trevant building. Hayes was at his golf club following the same routine he'd maintained for years. I waited in the parking lot, watching for any sign of trouble while she accessed his computer. She called me 20 minutes later. "Jude, you need to see this." "It's worse than we thought." I met her in Hayes' office where she'd printed out dozens of pages from his personal files. What we'd uncovered wasn't just simple theft. It was an elaborate insurance fraud scheme involving multiple companies and fake vendors. "Look at this," Claire said, pointing to a spreadsheet. "He's been running this operation at 3 different companies over the past 10 years. The Cleveland job, his position before that in Milwaukee, and now here." The numbers were staggering. Hayes had stolen over $1 million across all 3 companies using the same basic method. Each time, he would create fake shipping manifests for damaged goods, file insurance claims, then sell the supposedly damaged merchandise through a network of shell companies he'd set up. "These vendor names," I said, studying the list. "Halist Industries, Northgate. Supply, Velmark Distribution. I bet none of these companies actually exist." Claire pulled up the business registration records on Hayes' computer. "You're right. They're all registered to the same address, a post office box in Detroit. And look who signed the incorporation papers." Vincent Hayes had been stupid enough to use his real name on some of the documents. He'd grown overconfident, sloppy. The evidence of his crimes was sitting right there on his own computer. But there was something else that made my blood run cold. In a folder labeled Personnel Issues, I found files on 3 other employees who had been fired over the past 2 years. All of them had been accused of theft. All of them had been in positions where they might have noticed the fraudulent shipments. He's been systematically eliminating anyone who might expose him. I said, I'm just the latest in a long line. Claire was reading through her father's emails. Oh my God, Jude, look at this. She showed me an email chain between Hayes and someone named Thomas Wright, who appeared to be his contact at the insurance company. The emails made it clear that Wright was in on the scheme, helping Hayes process fraudulent claims in exchange for a percentage of the payouts. This is organized crime, I said. Your father isn't just a thief. He's running a criminal enterprise. Claire sat down heavily in her father's chair, overwhelmed by the scope of what we'd discovered. How did I not see this? How did I work here for 8 months and not realize what he was doing? Because he's good at it and because you trusted him. I kept reading through the files while Claire copied everything to a flash drive. In Hayes' calendar, I found something that made my stomach drop. He had a meeting scheduled for Monday morning with Trevant's insurance adjuster and the company's chief financial officer. He's planning something big, I told Claire. Look at this meeting, and here he's got a flight booked to Miami for Tuesday. He's going to run, Claire said quietly. He knows I've been asking questions, and he's planning to skip town with whatever he can steal before anyone catches on. We had until Monday morning to stop him. After that, Vincent Hayes would disappear with years' worth of stolen money, leaving Trevant Corp and its employees to deal with the aftermath. But we had something Hayes didn't know about. Complete documentation of his crimes and access to his personal files. The hunter was about to become the hunted. Sunday evening, I sat in my apartment with all the evidence spread across my kitchen table. Claire had gone home to pack for her supposed transfer to Cleveland, maintaining the pretense that she was following her father's plan. We'd agreed that she needed to act normal until we were ready to move. The question was how to use what we discovered. Going to the police was risky. Hayes had connections throughout the city, and there was no guarantee they'd take the word of a fired employee over a respected businessman. We needed someone with authority who couldn't be influenced by Hayes' network. I called my cousin Trevor, who worked for the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit in Chicago. I hadn't spoken to him in 2 years, but family was family. Jude, Trevor said when he answered, "What's going on?" I need advice about reporting a major fraud case. Someone who's been stealing from companies for years. Trevor was quiet for a moment. This isn't about your situation, is it? You're not thinking about making false accusations against someone who fired you? No, this is real. I have documentation of over $1 million in theft and insurance fraud. Send me what you have. If it's legitimate, I'll put you in touch with the right people. I spent the next hour scanning documents and emailing them to Trevor. An hour later, he called back. Jesus, Jude, this is massive. The insurance fraud alone is enough for federal charges. Where did you get all this? The thief's daughter. She's been documenting everything. Is she willing to cooperate with an investigation? I looked at the photo on my phone. Claire at dinner last week laughing at something I'd said. She'd already sacrificed her relationship with her father to do the right thing. Now I was asking her to help send him to prison. Yes, I said, she'd cooperate. Trevor gave me the name of a federal prosecutor in Detroit who specialized in white-collar crime. Call Patricia Wong. Tomorrow morning, tell her I sent you, and Jude, be careful. If this guy is as connected as you say, he might try to eliminate the evidence. That night I couldn't sleep. Everything was in motion now, but I kept thinking about Hayes' meeting on Monday morning. What if he suspected something? What if he was planning to destroy the evidence on his computer? Monday morning, I called Patricia Wong's office and explained the situation. She agreed to meet with me immediately. Claire joined us at the federal building, bringing the flash drive with all of Hayes' files. Wong was a sharp woman in her 40s who listened to our story without interruption. When we finished, she studied the documents for several minutes. "This is enough for multiple federal charges," she said finally, "but we need to move fast. If Mr. Hayes suspects he's under investigation, he might flee. He has a flight booked for tomorrow," Claire said. Wong picked up her phone. "I'm calling for a search warrant. We'll hit his office and his house simultaneously. I need both of you to stay available in case we need additional information." As we left the federal building, Claire grabbed my arm. "Are we doing the right thing?" I looked at her. "This brave woman who'd risked everything to expose her father's crimes. Your father made his choices. Now he has to face the consequences. By tomorrow, Vincent Hayes would be in handcuffs. The man who thought he could destroy my life to protect his secrets was about to learn that the truth has a way of surfacing no matter how deep you try to bury it." Monday afternoon, federal agents raided Trevant Corp. While Vincent Hayes was in his meeting with the insurance adjuster. I watched from across the street as they let him out in handcuffs, his face pale with shock. The man who'd fired me 3 days earlier was now facing 20 years in federal prison. Claire stood beside me, tears streaming down her face as she watched her father's world collapse. The FBI had found everything. The fake vendor accounts, the insurance fraud documentation, even communications with Thomas Wright about their criminal partnership. "Vincent Hayes, you're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud," the lead agent announced as they walked him past the news cameras that had already gathered. Hayes looked around frantically, probably hoping to see someone who could help him. His eyes found mine across the street, and for a moment we stared at each other. I saw recognition in his face, the understanding that the man he'd tried to destroy had orchestrated his downfall. The federal prosecutor had moved quickly once she'd seen our evidence. Search warrants for Hayes' office, his home, and his bank accounts had revealed a decade-long pattern of theft and fraud. The shell companies, the fake insurance claims, the systematic elimination of employees who might discover his crimes. It was all documented. Thomas Wright, the corrupt insurance adjuster, had been arrested at the same time. Faced with federal charges, he'd immediately agreed to cooperate and testify against Hayes. Regional Manager David Peterson emerged from the building looking stunned. The same man who'd refused to listen to my complaints about Hayes was now realizing he'd been working alongside a criminal for years. Hayes' lawyers would try to minimize the charges, but the evidence was overwhelming. Between the financial records Claire had gathered and the files on his computer, there was no defense. He'd stolen over $1 million and destroyed the careers of innocent employees to cover his tracks. As the police car pulled away with Hayes in the back seat, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The man who'd called me a thief was now facing the consequences of his own crimes. 3 months later, I was back at work, not at Trevanta, but at a better company where my reputation meant something. Patricia Wong had made sure the truth about my firing became public, clearing my name and opening doors I'd never expected. Vincent Hayes pleaded guilty to all charges and received 15 years in federal prison. The judge had been particularly harsh, noting Hayes' pattern of destroying innocent lives to protect his criminal enterprise. Thomas Wright got 5 years for his cooperation. Trevant Corp offered me my old job back with a promotion and a significant raise, but I declined. I'd found something better at Driftshade Limited, a logistics company that valued integrity over politics. My new boss, Janet Foster, had called Patricia Wong personally to verify my story before hiring me. Claire and I were stronger than ever. The ordeal had tested our relationship, but we'd come through it together. She'd taken a position with a nonprofit that investigated corporate fraud, turning her painful experience into a force for good. We still talked about her father sometimes. She visited him in prison once, but he'd been angry and bitter, blaming everyone but himself for his situation. Claire finally realized that the man she'd loved as a child was gone, replaced by someone willing to destroy his own daughter's life to protect his crimes. The other employees Hayes had fired were slowly rebuilding their careers, their names cleared by the federal investigation. David Peterson had been demoted for his failure to investigate the warning signs. While the company implemented new oversight procedures to prevent future fraud, I kept the newspaper clipping about Hayes' sentencing in my wallet for a while, but eventually threw it away. Some victories don't need souvenirs. Vincent Hayes had taught me that power without integrity is just a house of cards waiting to fall. Sometimes the fall takes years, but it always comes eventually. Justice had been served, and I'd learned that standing up for what's right, even when it costs you everything, is the only way to live with yourself. The man who tried to destroy me had ultimately destroyed himself. That was consequence enough.